Hello and welcome to Holiday Travel Watch. My name is Frank Breheny. Since last weekend, recriminations and counterclaims abound. Blame, politics, smoke and mirrors all combine to create the appropriate levels of moral outrage. What are we talking about here? Human rights abuses in Sudan or Burma? The decision to go to war in Iraq or Afghanistan? Or whether we'll have a hung parliament? No. This is about the strike of British Airways cabin staff. Now, I have absolutely no intention of examining the rights and wrongs of this dispute, except to say that in any adversarial contest there are seldom any winners. The machismo of dispute resolution means nothing to those people affected by its consequences, least of all the pawns in this dispute, the passenger. Now, I know I will not be Mr. Popular when I say this, but I have noticed a slight failure to highlight the issues that truly affect airline passengers and their rights. But in the interests of fairness, if you look hard enough, you'll find the details of those rights on the BA website. Sure, in the media there is plenty of sympathy, the lure of refunds, the chance to rebook flights with another airline with refunded monies. I have even seen reference to the fact that compensation is unlikely, and BA have been quoted as saying that cancellation is not within the airline's control. I shall have a further look at that issue in a moment. One media outlet even asked us if we would compile a list of items or activities to keep bored children occupied. Really? Is there nothing else as an organisation that we can suggest to help airline passengers? Now wait for it. Here comes the moment that I really won't be Mr. Popular. I'm going to raise the spectre of our old friend, EU Directive 261/2004. As I see it, we're dealing with a flight cancellation scenario, and therefore since 2005, EU airline passengers enjoy the rights accorded to them under the directive. However, any reading of the media reports and the froth they create appears to be ignorant of those rights. So, in anticipation and in an attempt to address the imbalance, I shall now set out those rights by reference to the directive. The first issue that I want to examine is the issue of compensation. Or can it actually be dispensed with? Article 5 provides the details of how a flight cancellation attracts compensation, but it sets out the circumstances when it will not apply, that being if you are told of the cancellation more than 2 weeks before the flight, or if you are offered rerouting if you are told less than 2 weeks, and so on. But Article 5.3 states, an operating carrier shall not be obliged to pay compensation in accordance with Article 7 if it can prove that the cancellation is caused by extraordinary circumstances which could not have been avoided even if all reasonable measures had been taken. So, what is meant by extraordinary circumstances? In the preamble to the directive, it states at paragraph 14, as under the Montreal Convention, obligations on operating carriers should be limited or excluded in cases where an event has been caused by extraordinary circumstances which could not have been avoided even if all reasonable measures had been taken. Such circumstances may, in particular, occur in cases of political instability, meteorological conditions, incompatible with the operation of the flight concerned, security risk, unexpected flight safety shortcomings, and strikes that affect the operation of an operating air carrier. Therefore, it seems clear that in a strike scenario, no compensation as detailed under the directive is payable. Or is it? The principal question for all BA passengers is this. Could the strike have been avoided? Have all reasonable measures been taken to avoid the circumstance of that strike? I suspect that the directive was drafted with the concept of sudden and unexpected events arising, which could in themselves be described as extraordinary circumstances. But could the present strike be said to be sudden and unexpected? If it is the case that the strike would not be classed as an extraordinary circumstance, and passengers were advised that their flights were cancelled at various stages of less than 2 weeks before departure and are not offered rerouting, then surely they are entitled to compensation under the directive. This is revolutionary stuff in this heady climate. Alright, I know some of you out there don't want to hear talk of this compensation. Okay, let's look at it from this point of view, that this strike is truly an extraordinary circumstance, and that no compensation is payable. Then what rights does a BA passenger have? Well, Article 5 states that you will be offered assistance under Article 8 and care under Article 9. Article 8 states that a passenger will be offered the choice between, and I think this is applicable to all passengers, and there are no time bars to the application of this article when the flight is cancelled. These are your rights. Number 1. Reimbursement of the full or part of the air price ticket within 7 days, and a return flight back to the first point of your departure. Or rerouting under comparable transport conditions at the earliest opportunity. Or rerouting at a later date at the passenger's convenience, and if you are rerouted to an alternative airport, then the airline will pay for the transport to your original destination. Now, Article 9 goes on to state that passengers will be offered free of charge, and again, there's no time bar of eligibility here when the flight is cancelled. These are your rights. However, I think this is probably more appropriate to those passengers whose flight is cancelled when they arrive at the airport or advised when they're en route. So the first right is meals and refreshments appropriate to the time of day. Hotel and accommodation for 1 or more nights, quite important here, when it becomes necessary. Transport between the airport and that hotel. 2 calls, faxes, telexes or emails, and the airline must also have regard to the needs of persons with reduced mobility, those accompanying them as well as unaccompanied children. So let's recall the heady aspiration of 261/2004 on the issue of flight cancellation. Paragraph 13 of the preamble states, passengers whose flights are cancelled should be able either to obtain reimbursement of their tickets or to obtain rerouting under satisfactory conditions, and should be adequately cared for while awaiting a later flight. Now that seems fairly clear to me. How about you? So when I'm asked to comment on what activities I would recommend to keep bored children occupied, I say that is the responsibility of the parents. After all, they know their children best. My role here is to point out and to speak up for the substantial rights that exist for consumers, no matter how unpopular that may be. No doubt that this message will be subsumed into the melee of who and what is right and what is wrong. The only thing that is right is to give consumers their rights and let the oligarchs slug it out in their smoke-filled rooms until right-minded people prevail. And so until the next time,